A cluster occurs naturally. It's a natural phenomenon and very important that we don't dream about inventing clusters. That's dangerous. So a cluster is there. Now what we're doing is enhancing that, stimulating it, understanding how do we apply fertilizer to accelerate the development of that cluster. And that is the role of the clustering initiative.
According to my understanding, a cluster consists of a management unit which provides services and added values, as well of members which are coming from the industry, small and medium enterprises, academia, investors, banks, training institutions and other institutions.
We usually use a very broad definition of a cluster, which in effect is just a group of companies and government institutions, universities, other research centers that are in the same business and are concentrated in a geographical area.
A cluster facilitator is really the person who has the will and also the endurance to bring people together in order to do joint projects, in order to do joint activities within the cluster. Because without as a facilitator, as an initiator, a lot of the activities going on in a cluster, they wouldn't happen.
A key role of the facilitator is in identifying what are the next steps in lifting the competitiveness of our cluster. Perhaps there are some immediate training issues. Then perhaps it becomes international development, participating in trade fairs. Perhaps then it's more fundamental R&D. So different activities as the competitiveness of that cluster is upgraded. And again, there is no end point to that. I look at many of the lead facilitators that I've worked with around the world. I would say there is a gender issue here. Many of the most effective facilitators are women. Women are much more comfortable and often much more effective in this role than men are. Often it is a marketing, it's a business development role. Certainly the person needs to have some experience of business, hands-on understanding of what business is about. And often that experience has come in being in a marketing function. It is certainly not somebody, if I can use this term, comes from the back office. It's not an analytic activity. This is much more a relationship building. So it needs to be somebody that is socially comfortable. Somebody that is comfortable in bringing people together. Somebody that is comfortable in leading a discussion. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that is comfortable in leading, let's say, a workshop with 150 people.
According to our experiences, the background should be come from the technical side. That means they must have an understanding of the technical area the cluster is responsible for, as well as they must have good skills for networking communication. The ideal cluster manager has both industrial background as well as very good communication and networking skills.
We in Austria, we have made quite good experiences with our 5 different fields of action, where we are providing our participating companies some kind of information transparency. That means that we try to bring out the information which is flowing between the companies to the surface. And the second activity is trainings and seminars. So after the people know what's going on in the cluster, they can meet each other, they can get a feeling for each other, they can learn, they can exchange experiences. So training and seminars is the second field of action. The third field of action is joint cooperation projects. Here we have initiated some 300 cooperation projects throughout the last years. And the fourth field of action is maybe the field of marketing and public relations. So here we try to do a lot of sector-related awards, of sector marketing, branch-related marketing activities. And last but not least, internationalization. Here we try to use our international contacts mostly to OEMs like to company as Daimler Chrysler, BMW, and we try to approach them as a cluster initiative, and we tell them, do you have interest in working together with Upper Austrian small and medium-sized companies, and doing that via the cluster organization, the cluster initiative. It's much more, it's much easier that those OEMs are willing to get in touch with the Upper Austrian SMEs.
The first cluster initiative was really a training of workforce staff all over the state to create a common understanding, a common language, and increase the capacity for open innovation and collaboration.
Creating the environment for clusters to prosper, clusters to operate, is a national framework, is a national infrastructure framework that needs to be facilitated all the time. The very idea of creating a cluster is really to create sustainability, profitability in a shorter way, in a better way, and create wealth. There is an entry strategy where a national funding is required. That is to create the environment, the understanding, the spirit of working together, creating the formula that is really productive. And then there should be an exit strategy to make sure whoever is participating in that clustering process graduates into self-sufficient immediately and start covering the costs of running that cluster. A different cluster can be created and in a different situation right from the scratch. That will be a continuous development process by the national agenda, of the national agenda.
Due to our experience, it's good that the public sector stays on board of the cluster initiative as a core investor. In Upper Austria, the public subsidy is reduced to about 20 to 30%, depending on the individual clusters. And I think that's very important, because otherwise clusters, if they're completely privately run cluster initiatives, there is often the situation that the clusters then tend to become some kind of consultancy company without having a close look on the needs and desires of the small and medium-sized enterprises, and only doing what the wealth and the powerful and the big companies are willing that the cluster initiative is offering.
In Catalonia, we give a lot of importance always to strategic analysis, so to do a good analysis, a good strategic analysis before acting, and this is, we consider it very, very important.
What people do is analyze data, and they measure what they call a location quotient, which is the relative concentration in your place versus other places, and look for places that are higher and have some critical mass. The problem is using this industry identification. A lot of the new and most interesting emerging clusters in rural areas can't be identified because we don't have any classifications, whether it's alternative energy or holistic health or creative enterprises or organic foods. So a lot of it is really just going in and trying to understand an area, see where the strengths are, talk to people, look at the phone directories, the industry directories, the internet, the guidebooks, and you can usually identify something that would have been missed by any kind of a government economic analysis.
The value of thorough world-class analysis is very important. If we didn't have the good analysis, we'd probably be looking at the things that we needed to fix yesterday, not the things we need to fix tomorrow.